Have you ever asked yourself how fortunate we are to live in a peaceful and stable country? Despite the difficulties many people are facing now during a worldwide crisis, many others are not that lucky. Indeed, today, new and continued conflicts, political and economical instability, but also poverty, climate change and terrorism continue to uproot lives around the world. The number of people forced to flee their home country has reached an unprecedented record last year of 100 million people displaced, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So what is a refugee? A refugee is someone who has no choice but to flee their home country because their lives and safety are under threat and there is no hope of a possible return. A migrant is someone who leaves a country deliberately to find work or join their family. 50% of the world's refugees are women and girls filled with hope and dreams of a better life. These women are ready to defy all the hardships and difficulties that making the journey and having refugee status can bring. Fortunately, some women succeeded to rebuild their lives in a safe country. Zahra and her children's lives changed at the end of August 2021. They left everything behind and moved to a safer country. They arrived in a place so different from anything they had known before, with a whole life to rebuild.
I'm from Afghanistan. I was a journalist in my country.
منسوبین پلیس حوزه 11 امنیتی بالفعل بازداشت شدند. از نزد این افراد یک میل سلاح کلاشینکوف و یک رادار موتر نو فیلدر به دست آمده است.
And when Kabul fell to the Taliban, I evacuated in the UK with my children.
Back in August 2021, the world remembers desperate Afghan civilians trying to jump on planes on Kabul airport tarmac. After the agreement of peace signed in 2020 by the United States and the Taliban, stating the withdrawing of the US and NATO troops from the country without the consent of Afghan officials, and the escape of Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, Taliban forces entered the capital of Kabul and returned to power, spreading terror among the population. After more than 4 decades of conflict and instability in Afghanistan, the country and its people have been decimated, leading thousands of people fleeing the austerity.
It was summertime and weather was very hot when the Taliban came into Kabul. And I remember that I presented the 9 o'clock news and my heart was beating and I couldn't present. I had a big stress and I thought everything will be wrong. And when I came out of the studio, the other colleagues just said, everything will be fine, why you're so worried? And I was worried about my son when he was in the school. At 11 o'clock, I received a call and they said the Taliban are near us, you have to leave them. When I went to the airport, I didn't know where I'm going. And my son was crying all the time, where we are going, what will happen in our life.
Zahra recalls how the journey conditions were difficult. The weather was so hot that many people died while waiting for water supplies or help. She even witnessed the death of her mother. She couldn't even breathe anymore.
When my son saw they was worried about experiencing the same, may they lose their mother in the airport and there's no one with them. It was a very bad journey for me. And after 24 hours when I reached in the UK, I felt a bit calm, but I didn't feel protected because we couldn't bring our clothes. Only one bottle of water and just some snacks for children like chips and biscuits. I thought every time there will be bombing suicide in the airport and we all will die. There was a lot of risk. Everything was very good in my life in Afghanistan, but here's lots of change. It's okay that it's positive change in some point, but it is lots of negative changes as well. And as you can see, I lost my job, and hopefully I can be a journalist again here, but there's not a lot of hope. When I came in the UK, I started everything from zero, and it's very difficult for a person to have everything and leave everything behind and come alone and start a new life from zero, and with empty pocket.
One of my dearest friends, Estelle Aubert, visited a refugee camp in Athens, Greece in 2022. As part of her studies, she witnessed humanitarian aid for refugees being carried out in Europe. After meeting several refugees, a beautiful woman came to her. Estelle allowed me to access her notes of the conversation. Here is the recording of the testimony, which has been kept anonymous on purpose.
I am an Afghan refugee born in Iran. My parents left Afghanistan in the 1980s for economic and security reasons. My family tried to reintegrate in Iran, but it wasn't easy. We started a long journey in 2016, walking 12 hours a day and carrying my children in the mountains. This journey was really demanding physically and psychologically. Still today I get tired very quickly when I'm going for a walk, even a quick one.
They then arrived in Turkey and were offered by smugglers to make the journey to Greece. Vulnerable refugees often accept to get in small and dangerous boats, making their lives at risk.
Once arrived in Greece, we spent 3 months in a camp outside Athens without electricity, air conditioning or gas. The lack of a proper home and the poor conditions and facilities were hard, but I keep a good memory because I was finally safe.
After staying in the camp, the UNHCR found them a home, but without the official refugee papers, they have been expelled. She dreams of getting back to university and move in Germany, hoping for a better future for her family. We can only admire the courage and resilience of these women to leave their countries behind and rebuild their lives elsewhere. For some, hope is in making a better future. Some achieved it. Now director of the charity Women for Refugee Women, Alphonsine went through a lot before getting where she is today.
I was born, raised in Rwanda, and left Rwanda in 1994 during the genocide against the Tutsi.
Back in 1994, about 800,000 people were slaughtered in just 100 days in Rwanda. The country was made of several ethnic groups, such as Hutus, Tutsi, and Twas. Tension in the country escalated after a plane carrying the then president and his colleague was shot down by Tutsis. Led by revenge and hatred, Hutu extremists started organized crimes towards the Tutsi community. Those crimes would later be qualified as a genocide. Throughout the country, widespread and horrific murders became the norm. Many civilians fled to neighboring countries to seek safety or were evacuated.
Hiding in a Catholic church where everyone was killed around us, but luckily for some miracle I was rescued by Belgian soldier, and one of them was my brother-in-law. To cut the story short, and he managed to take me and the whole family, my daughter was 6 months, my parents and a few others, to Belgium, where we became refugees. We lived in Belgium until 1999, and in 1999 I moved to UK.
Alphonsine saw the escape of her country as a real relief, despite the challenges.
You lose everything you had in life. We got there without anything, no food, no clothes, just what you are wearing, with a baby of 6 months. So losing that self-esteem, losing who you are, for me was the most difficult than the journey to becoming a refugee. The journey to become a refugee, in that moment, when you survive, you just feel blessed because you are being able to run away from a genocide, from people who are going to kill you, and you are leaving behind. It was difficult, but when I think about it, I say, how lucky. My personal story has just given me the strength and the determination to fight for others.
Geneva is known as the capital of peace. The city is home to the European headquarters of the United Nations, where the Palais des Nations plays an important role in the international peacemaking process and the protection of fundamental human rights. The UN Refugee Agency is also based in Geneva, but most of the actions are made on the field, closely with people being displaced and governments, honoring the 1951 Refugee Convention.
The 1951 Convention is being complemented by international human rights law. I mean, all these international norms provide, rules, oblige states to do or not do certain things.
Refugee women whose needs, priorities and voices are still often missing from policies designed to protect and assist them.
Still today, and more than ever, the United Nations play a major role in ensuring women's safety and human rights.
Fleeing is often dangerous for everybody, men, women, everybody, because you have smugglers, you have traffickers, you have everything, criminals. Women, you have all these aspects of sexual violence. So there, it's very important to be aware of this and to make sure that, during flight, wherever possible, we can offer protection, or we can alert states also to offer protection. It's the responsibility of the state. But if we see the state is not taking up that responsibility, yes, we alert states to such challenges and we try to change it. Women are very powerful. It's very important not to see women as victims. Nevertheless, there is this aspect of vulnerability because it starts already in the country of origin. Women have the same reasons to flee as men. They might be persecuted because they are politically active or because they belong to a minority. But then they might also be persecuted because they are women or face sexual violence, things like this. So there we have, been very active, obviously with other actors, to make sure that this is recognized as a reason under the 1951 Convention, which is the international instrument for the protection of refugees, as reasons to be granted refugee protection.
What can be done to improve things? This is a serious question. You cannot improve things, especially for those people who fled the war and conflict zone, without a proper maybe policy on immigration, coordination between the member of the EU, more maybe discussion and debate should take place.
Our definition and interpretation of refugees often lead to misunderstanding and discrimination.
The British people deserve to know which party is serious about stopping the invasion on our southern coast and which party is not. Some 40,000 people have arrived on the south coast this year alone.
One of my dearest friends, Estelle Aubert, visited a refugee camp in Athens, Greece in 2022. As part of her studies, she could witness humanitarian aid for refugees being carried out in Europe. Contrary to popular belief, as for the 2021 year, more than 7 out of 10 refugees in need of international protection come from just 5 countries: the Syrian Arab Republic, Venezuela, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and South Sudan. The most important hosting countries in the world are made of Turkey, Colombia, Germany, Pakistan, and Uganda.
When you see back after the Second World War, some of the EU member of states, they needed migrants to come to the EU and contribute to the economic of this EU member of state. Yeah.
In fact, immigration in the UK is an important part of its history, which has been happening for thousands of years. For centuries, various circumstances and events made people kept apart, but also moved around the world, sometimes from a continent to a completely unknown one. We can also go back as far as 650 before Christ, a time when people called the Celts immigrated to Britain. In the late 16th century, religious persecution led Protestants to flee their native land, mainly Catholic. England was then seen as a Protestant haven. More recently, within the modern immigration era, Britain witnessed many people settling on its land. The 50s and the 60s have seen a post-colonialism era for Great Britain. Many people came from the Caribbean, hoping for a better life as the economy of the islands was in crisis, with high levels of unemployment. The conflicts involving both India and Pakistan, as well as the civil war in Cyprus, resulted in many escaping to the United Kingdom. The 21st century, and people are still moving to seek a better future away from their countries, within the UK, seen as a whole way of possibilities for their futures. Immigration brought racism, discrimination, and anti-immigration movements throughout the 70s. However, foreigners shaped and became part of the British population's identity. As the year ended in June 2021, people born outside the UK made up an estimated 9.6 million people, according to the Migration Observatory.
So it shows that the migrants community, they are bringing a lot of good things to those countries who are accepting them as refugees, creating a positive environment for women to have a confidence in participation or in participating in a community life. We cannot build a better future for children if we do not look after the women, how what they need from the society, so they can build a better future for their children.
Nowadays, the country's population is considered one of the most multiculturalist in the world, making it an example of diversity and acceptance.
So my aim with this documentary is to hopefully change the public opinion on refugees, and especially on women, how they can be resilient and brave to let their lives behind, but also how they can contribute and take part in society and use their life experiences as a real strength. There is no greater sorrow but to lose your home, so that's why the author Nadia Hashimi once said,
"One of my dearest friends, Estelle Aubert, visited a refugee camp in Athens, Greece in 2022. As part of her studies, she witnessed humanitarian aid.
We definitely have something to learn from their stories and to reconsider and rethink our privileges that we too often take for granted.